Hey guys, will be the second part of my tutorial for Game Maker Studio 2 basics. Today we're going to do a little more on variables. We're going to do if statements, and we're also going to do input and a little bit on functions too. But hopefully we can get through it. All right. Okay. So first of all, let's make another new project. Let's make a Game Maker language project again. So, we learned some things about room. We'll call this new one our main. So remember, your room is kind of like the area of your game will be in, and let's make it a little smaller, so we don't have so much open space. So when we run this, you may notice that it's a lot smaller than we probably want. We want the game area that we work in to be small, so we don't have to deal with tons of empty space, and we can make sprites really quick because they're tiny sprites. But we may want the user to have a bigger screen so they can see what's going on. Not everything's so small. So remember last game I said that the room is the window, but not really. The room is more just the working space. It's not the window size. By default, the room is the window size, but not really. So if we want, we can kind of scale up the window, keep the room size the same, but scale up the window. And I'll show you what you mean. Let's first make an object. Let's make a button. Let's make it a sprite. Let's call it SPR button. Let's make it a little smaller. Maintain aspect ratio. We'll always keep the ratio of these two width and height. So this is a 1-to-1 ratio. So the width and the height will always be the same if I maintain the aspect ratio, because 1-to-1. So if I go like 5, it will make it 5, and that way nothing stretches. It's always the same ratio. But let's exit. Let's not maintain aspect ratio because we want this image to be different. Yeah, it's kind of good size for a button. Make it whatever color you want. Yeah, I'll make this nice red. I like this red. Alright. Okay, let's go change. I don't like black. Let's change the background color. Let's make it a nice green. Looks good. So if we put this button in there, remember we can't put instances on the background layer, and I was on the background layer. So let's go back to the instances layer. Oh, I haven't made. See, I was trying to put a sprite into the room for instances, but a sprite isn't an instance. An instance is an instance of an object, so we need to make an object. O button, and you can see O button is an object, so we can give it a sprite. sprite button. And now we could put the object O button into the room. Once we're on instances. Oop, it's really small, but that's okay. Let's zoom in. Zoom in a lot. All right, so we have our button in our room. Tiny room, but it's all right. So if you run it, notice how the game room is super small. Like if I tried to press that button, it would be kind of difficult. I would have to get like really in there. But we can actually change the game window without changing the room itself. Because the game window is just the size of the window, and it can be scaled however we want. We do, however, want the game window to be this room size. So our room size right now, you see, is 200 by 100. That's a 2-to-1 ratio, right? So we want, when we change our game window, we want to keep that 2-to-1 ratio. So how you do that is you go to the creation code. Now every room has creation code, but it's empty. What creation code is, as soon as you enter the window and it's created for the very first time, the creation code for the game room will be created. And so this is good for us. So we can set the size of the window as soon as you enter the room. So let's do that. So this is a function. We dealt with this before with the show message. But what a function is it's a thing that you put something into these two parentheses, arguments, and you can see on the bottom left here, it will show you the two arguments that they want. They want W and H, which stands for width and height. So right here, they want a width for the window size and a height for the window size, which is nice that it tells us all that information. And with every argument that you put in, an argument's just something that you put into a function. Remember, you put in an argument to a function. The function uses that argument to do something. So with this, we're putting in width and height, and the function is going to change the window size because it's called window set size, and it will use the width and height to change it. So we want something. Let's go. Let's make it 3 times bigger. So we'll make it 600 by 300, and that still maintains our 2-to-1 ratio. So I have my first. I wanted a width. My width is 600. My height is 300. And it's separated by a comma. Now every argument that you put into a function will be separated by comma between the arguments. Okay, and this is in the creation code. The room is, we start in the room, and right before the room is created, we'll set the window set size, we'll set the window to 600 by 300. And you'll see what that does. You'll see how room size, which is the area that we do all our work in, and window size is different. Wow, you see how much bigger that is? And you know what? We'll make it a little bit bigger even than that. .800 by 400 still maintains our 2-to-1 ratio. And look at that. It's pretty big now. Now we can see everything pretty clearly. The button is the correct size. And that's nice. Okay. So you remember that this is an object, and objects are stuff that you put into rooms eventually. And remember that objects are made out of events. And we learned the three most important: create, step, and draw. Remember what I said last video. If you want, there's a hidden draw event that's there if you don't make a draw event. And all it does is it draws the sprite. It draws the object. So if you make a draw event, it will delete that and go over it. And so we don't want that. And what we want is we want for this to be drawn to the screen. So what we do, that way it's not invisible when we put it on the screen. Because if we do nothing in the draw event, the object will just never be drawn. Reminder that create is set when the object is first created. It will run once. And step will run once per frame or once per step. Similar concepts. All right, so there's some things I want to go over, kind of expanding on our last video. So we learned vars, which are local variables. We learned global to the object variables, which have no prefix. And we learned globals, which are global to everything. Everything will share this one variable. Now we learned that you only the var prefix once when you create the variable. And if you want to use this variable other than that, then you stop using that prefix and just use the variable name. Something, when you create it, you don't use any prefix. And global, on the other hand, the global dot whatever, you always use the prefix. So anytime you need to use this whatever variable anywhere, you'll always do global dot whatever the variable name is. You can name your variables anything you want. The only restrictions is you can't name them things that are keywords. So we talked about some of those. There's a lot of them, but some of those are X, Y, things like that nature. You can't redefine them. So I can't use a var prefix before a keyword because it's already defined. I can't redefine it. I can't use global before a keyword because the type of variable is already created. It doesn't allow me to recreate the variable like that. Okay. I can change those keyword variables, like I can make X whatever I want, right? But I can't redeclare X. I can't go var X equals 5. It will give me an error. On runtime. It won't give me an error in the compiler, or in the editor, but it will give me an error on runtime. And we can actually test that. Cannot redeclare a built-in variable, malformed assignment, a statement. So yeah, some other restrictions on what you can name things is you can't begin a variable with a number. I can't go one thing equals 5. This will quickly give me an error. Unnecessary expression 1 used as a statement. I can have numbers in my variable, like if I did thing 1. This works perfectly fine. I can have it at the end. But I cannot begin a variable name with a number. I also can't have spaces. I can't do thing, whatever. This will give me an error. It doesn't know what thing is. It doesn't like that I have a space there. Don't ever name your variables with a space. That will give you an error. Unnecessary expression, thing used as a statement. But I can use underscores. I can underscore if I want to have space between my text. So that's just some things to keep in mind. We're going to move on to if statement. So if statements and strings, which a string is just multiple characters. So what a character is a single letter. So if you have in programming, we would call this a character, and a string is a string of characters being strung together. So it's like a word or a sentence or whatever. So strings have some special properties. They can be concatenated. So let's say I have an and I have a sentence. And I want to combine those two things. So if I were to do this, what do you think will happen here? What happens when you add like this? What happens when you add these two? Let's find out. Hello, my name is Josh. Let me do this to the step event, so it's going to happen every frame. Let's switch this to the create. So we can add two sentences to combine them. And I put a space at the end because it doesn't do that by default. You need to add a space if you want spaces in between the end of your sentence and your next one. So what if you did this? What if I had a number? And I wanted to add my name and number. So I want to say Josh 5. What happens here? Take a guess. Ooh, we get an error. What is this error? Do add execution error at GML create line var combined equals name plus number. So do add, you're actually going to see a lot. Do add means that you tried to put together two types of information that weren't compatible. So when I have two strings and I put the plus there, the GameMaker knows, hey, this isn't addition. We are just concatenating, which means combining two separate strings or two separate, words. We're combining two strings together. If it's two numbers, they know, okay, this is addition. We want to add these two numbers together. So when GameMaker sees that you have a number and a string, they don't know what to do with it. They're like, okay, should we add this like addition, or should we concatenate it like it's a string? So if I wanted Josh 5, what I would do is I would tell GameMaker, hey, I want this to be represented as a string right now, right here, like this. So this is telling GameMaker, remember these functions, they do something. This one, what it does is it takes something and it tells GameMaker that it wants to use that something as a string, as characters. So in this case, we're using the number as character. So that way, when it goes, okay, we're going to add two things, what are we adding? It says we're adding a string and a string. Okay, I know how to do that. We'll just concatenate it. Josh 5, perfect. But what if we want to, I have a letter, right? Actually, we're not gonna talk about that. Technically, single characters are actually numbers, but I'll get into that another time. There was one data type that I didn't go over last, and I wanna talk about it. It's called Boolean. Boolean can be one of two types. It can be one of two things. It can either be true or false. So if I had var Josh is cool. My name is Josh. Is Josh cool? Oh, we can set it to true. Josh is cool equals true. Or we can set it to false. Josh is cool equals false. But those are really the only two types of things that a Boolean can be. A Boolean means it's a data type that's either true or false. So what happens if we try to show message that? Zero. Interesting. Why didn't that show us false? Okay, this is the answer. But first, let's see what true shows us. 1. So true and false are true and false for us. But in actuality, according to GameMaker, they're no different from numbers. False is 0, and true is anything that's not 0. So for instance, by default, true would be 1. But you might wonder, like, what's the use? Why would I want this Boolean value that's true or false? Well, first, to understand that, we need to understand conditionals. So a conditional is something that checks if a statement is true or false. An if statement is a type of conditional. So let's do if. So how this works, you have an if, you have two parentheses, and then you have curly braces right here. And so whatever you put in between the parentheses of the if, it will check. It'll be like, is the thing you put in here equivalent to true, or is it equivalent to false? It can only be those two values. It can, once the thing in here is, worked out by GameMaker, it will eventually be true or false. And remember, true is anything above 0, and false is 0. So when we said this is true, if Josh is cool, okay, it's going to go if Josh is cool is true, because we set it to that. It's going to end up being true, and then it's going to do whatever's in here. We'll do that. So let's run this and see what happens. You take a guess to see what you think will happen here. Oh, it says Josh is so cool. Very true statement. But what if Josh isn't cool? Like, what if we set Josh is cool to false? What do you think will happen here? We got no message. Because only if Josh is cool, only if this equivalates to true, do we do the things in the curly braces. So Josh is so cool. There's one other thing we could do with that, which is else. An else statement comes immediately after the ending curly brace of the first if. So right here. And what we do here is we put down anything we want to happen if this doesn't work, if it doesn't do this, we default to do whatever's in here, whatever's between these braces, right? So if Josh isn't cool, we'll do this. Let's see. God, Josh is so lame because we set it to false. So it said, is Josh cool? Okay, no. So we'll do our false or else statement. All right, so that's if statement. Now we're gonna cover a few more things and we'll wrap this up. One thing, you don't put semicolon at the end of the braces for if statements for most other things. Like right here, I put semicolon at the end. Right here, I put semicolon at the end. And GameMaker, you technically don't have to do that, but you can run into issues if you don't. So at the end of every statement, at the end of every line of code, you should probably put a semicolon. The exceptions, there's few exceptions. One of the exceptions that we just found out is the curly braces. You don't have to put a semicolon at the end of those. In fact, you shouldn't. So next step, we're going to talk about character input. For this one, I'm going to show you how to do it in events, which is easier but less powerful. In the next video, I'll show you how to do it in code, which is a little more challenging, a little more tricky, but is much more powerful. So you can, in this object, you can add an event, a mouse. Let's do left released. If we click a left release on the mouse on this object, this code will run once. Every time the left mouse button is released and the mouse is hovering over this object. So what we want to do is we want something to happen, right? So let's show them. Very good. And what if we wanted What if we wanted the button to change color once we clicked, if the mouse was pressed down on it? I'm so sorry. Okay, what we could do is left down. So this one runs once if it's being released. This one will run every step that the left mouse button is being pressed down. Let's just make it smaller, actually. So let's make a new color. Let me show you a new keyword. These two variables, check the scale, how large the sprite is of the object we're calling. So they can be from 0 to 1, 0 being non-existent, it's invisible because it's so small, to 1 being its normal size. On the X scale, so it's width, and the Y scale, it's height. You can also do greater than 1 to make it bigger than it usually is on the X or Y scale. But for this, when it's being pressed down, what we should do is we should let's make it a little smaller. 0.8 is a little smaller than 1, right? So we're going to make it a little smaller. That's about 80% of its total size in the X and Y scale. Because remember, 1 would be 100%, 0.8 would be 80%, 7 would be 0.7 would be 70%, 0.5 would be 50%, and so on. 2 would be 200%. So when it's down, we're going to make it smaller. Let's see how this works. Oh, it says you clicked me. But the issue is it never gets bigger, right? Well, when we click down, we set the image X scale, but we never set it back to 1. So it's always going to be a little shrunk. But if we go to left released, in the left released event, we reset the X and Y scale. We can make them their full size after the button's been released. See? So when we press down and release, it says you clicked me and then goes back. We should have it go back before. So anything, the code runs in order. So we do it like the image X scale will be set to 1 and then it will show us the message. So it looks a little more natural. You clicked me. So there you go. You have a button. When you press it and release it, it will say you clicked me. And that's it. That's about all I really wanted to show you guys. I hope that you understood F statements a little. You understood the left and left down event. Next video, we're going to show you how to do these two things without using the event. We're just going to do it all in code using if statements and some functions. If you have any questions, again, let me know. And I hope this was helpful in some way. I love, being helpful in any way I can be. So just let me know if there's anything you want to learn specifically. If there's anything that I'm doing wrong, or I'm not teaching well enough, or if you have any questions or really anything, please message me. I would love to be of help to you guys. All right, thank you so much.